Sir, actually exam is going on, so very few are joining.
Okay, okay. So how many people will be here? 2, 3, 4?
Sir, you have already experience. Maybe one or two.
Okay. As soon as you get 1 or 2, just let me know.
Okay, sir. Sir, we can start now.
We can start?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, okay. All right. So how many people have joined? 1 or 2?
Hello.
Hello. How many people have joined so far? Hello, Supriya. Dr. Sadanand, can I begin?
Sir, someone will join after some time. Help me get to start. Otherwise, it will take your time will be wasted.
So, should I begin now?
Sir, someone will join after 10 minutes. That's what we can start.
I can start. Okay, all right. Thank you very much and a good evening to everyone who are here this particular course. This course is titled, the title of the course is State and Society in Africa. Uh, and the number is MPSE 005. Let me repeat, MPSE 005, State and Society in Africa. This course is being offered by IGNOU under the MEMIDI program, which is Master of Arts in Migration and Diaspora Studies. So again, welcome to this particular online course. In the last class, we covered basically an overview about Africa. Today, just let me spend few minutes into giving you a little bit larger picture about what this course is all about in this particular things that I'm covering today. Unit 1 talks about introducing Africa, both the pre-colonial, the colonial, the post-colonial aspect, the legacy that the colonial powers left behind, some positive, some negative, some good ones, some not so good ones, nationalism, how it affected the legacies in Africa. Of course, Africa is a huge heterogeneous entity. So it is wrong to categorize Africa just like one. Okay, just like India is a plural society. What you see in Kashmir may be different in Kerala. What you see in Maharashtra may be different in Jharkhand or in Mizoram or Nagaland, for example. So how nationalism affected the legacy of Africa in different parts in Eastern Africa, Western Africa, Southern Africa. There are dozens of countries, and each country comes with its own thrust, with its own ethos, its own uniqueness and own distinctiveness. Some pluses and some minuses, as it happens everywhere. Problems of statehood when the different African states became independent around late 1940s, 1950s. Even some countries got independence in the late 50s and early 60s. How they tried to attain the statehood, which is a very important requirement for gaining or acquiring sovereignty. And what are the challenges they faced? What are the impediments they faced? What are the obstacles they faced? So in terms of integration and legitimacy, because unless you get a statehood, you do not gain legitimacy. And legitimacy is very important instrument for being getting stabilized internally and also being recognized externally. Issues of development, which is very uneven again. So you cannot compare apples with oranges. So you cannot compare, for example, South Africa with Mozambique or with Liberia or with Malawi or with Mali. Different countries, they've come up with different kind of yardsticks and different kind of benchmarks. Type of regimes, some countries are military, some countries civilian, some countries partly civilian, partly military, some countries is ruled by under authoritarian rulers, some countries they try to develop at least some element of democracy. And again, don't be confused when I say democracy. I remember a couple of decades ago when I was a student in Nepal, even during the monarchy period of King Mahendra, King Birendra, etc., they had something called Panchayat democracy. In Indonesia, for example, I'm just giving you some example, they had a democracy called guided democracy. In India, we have a different kinds of democracy. In France, it is different. It's a very presidential form. In America, the president is there, but it's different than France. Canada is different. Australia is different. Germany is different. Japan is different. So different countries, they have adopted different models of democracy. But certain things are important. For example, independence of the judiciary, the role of the media, the salience of the people, the civil society, and many other aspects. Africa and world economy, how it has been integrated into the world economy, particularly the challenges Africa faced pre-globalization, pre-1991, and post-globalization, when the process of globalization, liberalization, and privatization crept into the world economy, and how it affected Africa in general and individual African countries in particular. Did it affect South Africa the same way to Kenya, to Uganda, to Ethiopia, to Liberia, to Congo, etc., etc. Cold War, non-alignment in Africa, that is also very, very important. How the Cold War affected, as I said in my other class, the Cold War lasted for roughly 45 years. At the end of World War II in 1945 till 1990. So this 45 period is known as the Cold War. Why it is known as the Cold War? Cold War is known because that is the time when both the superpowers at that time during the Cold War phase, 1945 to 1990, they did not come face to face, or they did not blow each other's face during that 45 years. So whatever the crisis took place during this 45 years, 1945 to 1990, it was done in a proxy manner. For example, Soviet Union, then Soviet Union, erstwhile Soviet Union, they attacked Hungary, they attacked Czechoslovakia, they attacked Poland. Okay, so these are some of the times that the Cold War took place. In also during the Cold War period, America also involved in Haiti, in Panama, in many other countries in Latin America, Central America, South America, and many other places. They had a long war in Vietnam, in Southeast Asia, in Cambodia, in Indochina, Laos, many other examples I can give. During this Cold War period, how Africa got affected, how the big powers, particularly United States of America, USA, and Soviet Union, USSR, how they tried to shape and reshape the contours of African continent to their advantage. The whole idea was to increase the spheres of influence, to tilt the balance of power in their favor, either in American favor or Soviet Union favor. So there was a big tussle for supremacy or dominance or hegemony, if I can use that word, in Africa by both the superpowers during the Cold War period. Non-alignment was a very important component during the Cold War, which some of the countries like Ghana, like Congo, Kenya, Zaire, etc., they did that. And India was one of the pioneering members of non-alignment movement. Our first Prime Minister, Jawaharlal Nehru, he deliberately chose the path of non-alignment, meaning we would not align with either the American bloc or the Soviet bloc. We like to carve our own independent path. We like to have our own developments and trying to get the help whoever wants to give us without any strings attached, without any conditions attached. That's how India became a pioneering member. Nasser, the president of Egypt at that time, Marshal Tito, the leader of Yugoslavia, Sukarno, the leader of Indonesia, Jimmy Kenyatta from Kenya, so some of Nkrumah from Ghana. These are the members, the founding members of the non-alignment movement. So India supported the main process of non-alignment, particularly in Africa, because India was very much in favor of decolonization and also ending the racial segregation, ending the process of colonization in all of Africa. One by one, due to the efforts made by India and other countries, the friendly countries, one by one, slowly and steadily, all the African countries became independent. United Nations peacekeeping in Africa, United Nations, how it came into picture, particularly in terms of peacekeeping, peacemaking, and peace building kind of things, okay? In all different parts, in Zaire, in Angola, in Mozambique, Rwanda, etc., etc. And how the peacekeeping troops, they also paved the way, what I would say, the process of good governance as opposed to bad governance, okay? Or at least the sustenance of governance in different parts of Africa, okay? And also they tried to enhance and push the agenda of the United Nations, particularly the Millennium Development Goals, the Sustainable Development Goals, and all the other agenda of the United Nations. In the post-Cold War Africa, which is post-1990, again, today is what, 2025. So in 35 years, again, how Africa has moved forward. So number of countries from Africa, they have moved up in the economic ladder, in the political ladders, in the social ladders, in the cultural ladders. Maybe some countries have not done that well, but some countries, most countries, I think they have done reasonably well in some of these parameters. So in post-Cold War Africa, we see a lot of these countries, they have got out of the ghetto, they've got out of the different kinds of the dependency models, because a lot of these countries, they are very dependent on the powers. So slowly and surely, they became very, very independent in those particular ways, the post-Cold War Africa. But again, the problem is in the post-Cold War era, if you look at 1990 to 2000, that was the time, I would say, like 1945 to 1990, the Cold War period. It was a bipolar world. Bipolar means bi means two, pole means two. A pole means the power centers. So there are two poles, basically. USA, Soviet Union. United States of America, Soviet Union. Then 1990, end of the Cold War, end of Soviet Union. Soviet Union got dismembered into many, many republics. Okay. Then we have again see a unipolar world, or some people say monopolar world. Uni means one. Again, the dominant power in the world was in the post-1990, in the post-immediate aftermath of the Cold War was United States of America, USA. Then that thing continued for about 5 years, maybe 10 years, till the end of 20th century. When the 21st century came, the beginning of 2000, we see again this unipolar world is paving the way, not bipolar world, rather a multipolar world. Multipolar means you have got multiple power centers. USA is there, but Russia or Soviet Union is not there, but Russia is still a significant power, particularly economically and also militarily. They still possess a lot of nuclear weapons. In fact, if you check in the Google, so today Russia possesses more nuclear weapons than America. Probably, I think I was reading somewhere, Russia got more than 5,000 nuclear bombs, America has got about 4,500 nuclear bombs or nuclear weapons. Okay, so Russia still has got significant amount of nuclear arsenal. So Russia is still militarily and economically, they have got huge power. They have got a lot of energy resources, for example. France is an important power. Great Britain is an important power. China is a rising power. Japan is a big power. India is a big power. So there are multiple centers of power. Germany is a big power. So the multipolar world, it continued in the beginning part of 21st century. That continued for, let us say, another 10, 15 years. By the time it was 2015 or 2020, the multipolar world, and some people say after 9/11, the 2001 terrorist attacks in World Trade Center in New York, it became a more like a messy polar world. So it was, instead of a multipolar world in a benign way, it is more like a messy kind of thing. Everybody is trying to stake out their position. Everybody is trying to fight for their own turf and battle for supremacy. So this multipolar world or a messy polar world around 2015 or 2020, it became more like a multiplex world, which the scholar Amitabh Acharya, he talks about in his book. The multiplex world, in the sense, this, when you say the word multiplex world, like for example, you go to a movie house, PVR, or you go to any of these chain things, okay? You get a variety of movies, okay? So you can pick and choose. I would like to watch a regional movie. I would like to watch a Hollywood movies. I would like to watch a Hindi movie, whatever. Okay, you can pick and choose. Just buy some popcorn, go there and sit. Simultaneously, 4 or 5 movies are being held. Okay, so put it in a metaphoric sense. Okay, the whole world is like a multiplex. Okay, so you have got America, which is a dominant power, but not the most dominant power as it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. So it is no longer the sole hegemon. It is no longer the sole dominant power that it used to be. Today, you have got powers, multiple centers of power, plus the emergence, what I would like to say, of the global south. South means the developing countries, underdeveloped countries, least developed countries. And most of them, they come into the basket of Africa. You take up the example of Congo, Mozambique, Kenya, Liberia, Somalia, Ethiopia, anything, Egypt, a lot of these countries, okay? I'm keeping aside South Africa because that is considered to be a much more affluent countries within the African continent. So the post-Cold War era, in the 2015, 2020 onwards, it became more like a multiplex war, where the global north, meaning the rich countries, the affluent countries, the industrialized countries, they still dominate, but they did not have the full sway in international relations, in international affairs, in the global aspects. They have to join hands, they have to coexist and co-partner with the global south, which is a dominant power. India was the leader of the global south. Okay? For example, in the 2 years ago, when we had this G20 summit in Delhi, a lot of credit goes to India's leadership because India took the position to include African Union, AU, as a member of G20. African Union, Africa was not represented in G20. Although Africa is a huge continent with so many countries, with so many potentials. But now, the last, I think, couple of months ago, couple of weeks ago, in fact, Prime Minister Modi went to Brazil for this year's G20 conference. And African Union is very much represented there. So Africa has got its own due place after long, long decades. Okay. So again, this multiplex world, some people say even that has undergone some change in the last couple of years, particularly after the Ukrainian crisis. There is a war going on in Ukraine for the last 3 years. There is war going on in Gaza. There is war going on in different parts of the world. Okay. So they say the whole world currently in the last, and I was reading an article by a very famous political scientist from Johns Hopkins University in United USA. His name is Joseph Joffe. Joseph, Josef, Joseph Joffe, Joffe. You can check that in the Google. And he says the world is now, instead of multiplex, it is now a 2.5 world, 2.5 powers. So what does it mean by 2.5 powers? So what, according to Joseph Joffe from Johns Hopkins University in USA, the 2.5 world is, or 2.5 power is USA, China, and Russia as a half power. Basically, Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, okay, now it is in a reduced military power, reduced economic power, comparable to China, okay, and because of the long years and dragged down war in Ukraine, and basically piggybacking behind China and its leader Xi Jinping, okay. So it is like Trump and Jinping as two big powers, okay, and Putin from Russia as a half power. Okay, maybe you and I we can argue about it, but this is a theory that he has propounded. The whole world has now become a two and a half power. So I think you have got different kinds of variations, different kinds of uh, uh, nuances, different kinds of uh, descriptions about the new world war. The human security. So when we say human security, that is also again important issue in Africa. When you say human security, it has got various facets, it has got various dimensions. For example, the human security, food security, health security, environmental security, uh, security for children, security for women. There are a lot of issues that affect that comes within the umbrella or under the rubrics of the human security. How individual African states and how Africa in general as a continent it is faring in human security, and how other countries are helping Africa to get over or move up in the scale in terms of solving or resolving or alleviating some of these issues in terms of food security, economic securities, health securities, environmental securities, etc., etc. Some places, they have got drought or famine. They have not no rains. Like I remember when I was in USA, once at that time there was a big famine in Ethiopia. I believe this was sometime in mid 80s or maybe late 80s. I forgot the year. And a lot of us as a student, we donated some money, $5, $10, $20, whatever we could, okay? Because there is a severe famine, millions of people were starved to death. So whatever little we can chip in, whatever little help we can give, we try to pull all the money together and we signed to send it through the American Red Cross to go to Ethiopian famine. So in many places in Africa, they don't have any rains for years together, okay? So that creates a lot of environmental disaster kind of things. And unlike India and many other countries, they don't have a very robust or vibrant national disaster management authority. Luckily, in India, we have it. If there is a cyclone, if there is a famine, if there is a drought, if there is an earthquake, there are mechanisms both at the state level as well as the national level to deal with some of these natural calamities. Even the COVID-19, the pandemics, okay? And you must have read it in different places, okay? They did not know, how to deal with it, how to contain it. That happened with them during the Ebola crisis that affected mostly the African countries. And millions of people died in Ebola. That was again another pandemic, H1N1, swine flu. And the latest one, of course, the COVID-19. Thanks to India and its leadership, at least I think they're also very grateful and appreciative of India's position, because India was one of the rare countries that came out to help and extend the hands of cooperation with all the African countries as a matter of friendly countries, as a matter of friendly fraternity, to help them with the proper vaccines like Covishield, Covaxin, etc., etc. So I think they really appreciate it and they remember that very much. Deterritorialization and problem of social identities. What is deterritorialization? Deterritorialization means you displace the people who belong to a particular place. It's almost like a migration from the rural place to the urban place, or you displace a significant chunk of population from one place to another. Now the issue is social, cultural, economic, empowerment, a lot of those issues that comes into it. Just pushing millions of people into another part does not solve all the problem. You have to have an entire mechanism in place, the entire infrastructure in place. Violence and its manifestations, how different African countries, they try to deal with the issues of violence, because when people are poor, when governance is very poor in a very pitiable conditions, and people are not getting the basic needs, whether in terms of housing or food or economy, etc. So it is very natural. Some people have a tendency to grow violent. The issue is how to manage this violence, how to contain this violence that happens within the society. Because, if the violence goes unabated, then that has a potential of disturbing the entire equilibrium in different African societies, and that will have a ripple effect on other countries. Economic cooperation, continental and regional. A couple of years ago, I wrote an article in Indian Foreign Affairs Journal called Dateline Africa, a contest jockeying for power between the three big countries, namely China, Japan, and India. And currently, if you read some articles, again, you can go to Google's or you can read some basic books on Africa, how China, for example, how they're investing millions or billions of dollars under the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, under OBOR, One Belt, One Road initiatives. They're pumping money into it. Okay. India is also helping in their Africa Connect programs, outreach to Africa programs, giving a lot of scholarship, a lot of loans, a lot of infrastructure, a lot of the governmental BSNL, a lot of the public sector units of India, the railways, they are also setting up things there. We are also giving them a lot of the new technologies that they're adopting. A lot of the private players, Ambani, Adani, Mittal, a lot of these companies, Jindals, they're also setting up their factories there. So in many different ways, in IT, in infrastructure, in pharmaceuticals, in all of these things, I think India is being at the forefront in trying to raise the standards of the people in terms of the economic cooperation. The United States, USAID, and a number of other organizations. As far as Japan is concerned, Japan has a very robust and very well generous program called ODA, which is Official Development Assistance. Under Japanese ODA, they give a lot of generous soft loan to different African countries to develop their infrastructures. For example, they give money to us, to India, to develop this underground metro in Delhi, to have bullet trains between Mumbai and Ahmedabad. They are also doing similar kind of things, polio eradications, forestation drives in different parts to check the natural disasters. So Japanese JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency, and ODA, Official Development Assistance Program. Japan provides a lot. China provides a lot under One Belt, One Road, particularly after Jinping came to power a couple of years ago, and they're still doing it in Africa. But the downside is a lot of the money that China gives to Africa, it is not like a grant. There is a difference between grant and a loan. Okay. Grant is something which is like a giveaway. You give it, okay, like a charity, okay, $100, $100 million, $1 billion, etc. Okay. And you just do it in good faith so that let those governments, they try to stand up, they pick up the pieces and move on, okay? But loan is something that you have to give back, okay? And with interest, okay? So China is very tricky and very diplomatic in the sense that they give loans under this One Belt, One Road, or you can say BRI program, Belt and Road initiatives, okay? With some relaxed kind of norms like 10 years, maybe 20 years or 30 years, but nevertheless, it is a debt, okay? So what happens is, when the countries start paying back with interest, okay, they again fall back into the debt trap, okay? So they never fully recover from getting over this debt trap. So that is something that some of these African countries, they are concerned about. I mean, how to pay back the money they got from China, okay? All that was done in good faith, okay? Because they have to pay not only the principal sum, they have to pay the principal plus the interest in a given period of time, 10, 15, 20, 25 years, okay? So that is, again, something very, very important. As far as Japan is concerned, a lot of times they give you like a long rope. For example, when Japan gives soft loan to India, for example, they give under 99 years, okay? And 99 years is a long time, okay? And after 99 years, a lot of times they just waive the loan. That means you don't have to pay back anything. But again, after 99 years means literally 100 years. That's a reasonably a long period of time when the country can stand up, things like that. And the last chapter in this course is called India and Africa, meaning India and Africa, how they're embedded historically, culturally, economically, okay? A lot of things are moving up, okay? Of course, India has to take care of a lot of things because India is an aspiring power, India is a rising power, India is an emerging power, India is the upper tier economy, but still we consider Africa to be our brothers, to be our brethren, so try to help them because of the historical connection. There is also a significant amount of Indian diasporic population living in different parts of Africa. For example, in Kenya, in Uganda, in South Africa. You must have all seen the movie Gandhi. You must have read the books of Gandhi, how Gandhi went in the late 1880s and stayed there until 1893, 94, okay, when he fought in the province of Natal and Pretoria on behalf of the indentured laborers who were they are from India to and how those people were discriminated. They did not get jobs, they did not get adequate wages, etc., etc. And Gandhi fought for the rights of the Indian people. And in those days, in South Africa in 1880s, 90s, even that continued well in the first half of the 20th century. The policy of segregation, you segregate people, the white people, the black people, the colored people. So Indian people were bracketed as the colored people, and they were also discriminated. You must have seen in the movie, you must have also read how Gandhi, although he was holding a first class ticket in a railway train and he was traveling from Pretoria to Johannesburg within South Africa, how he was pushed out and kicked out of the first class compartment because although he had a first class ticket to travel in a train in a compartment coach, he was an Indian and Indians were considered to be colored people. That means you are not equal to the white people. So you have to basically get down from the train, and how he was humiliated, how he was insulted. And I think that shows the Gandhi's sense of religion, his sense of resistance, the nonviolence movement, Sarbodaya, Swaraj, all the things that happened to Gandhi when he came back from South Africa to India in the early part of 20th century. He started out this movement because the British were not only ruling in South Africa at that time, they are also ruling, colonizing India, the greater India, I mean. Because in those days, India means Nepal was there, Sri Lanka was there, Bangladesh was there, Pakistan was there, Afghanistan was there. So it's a big thing. And Gandhi fought for those countries. So basically, I think these are the parameters. These are the parameters that I think we need to remember within which the Africa as a continent, I think they moved forward, how Africa tried to move up in the emerging world orders. Okay, a lot of people, they demonize Africa, that everything is bad and everything is like doom and gloom kind of scenario, like a dark continent, which is devoid of any history, culture, socio-political institution. But some people say, I think it is premature to write an obituary of Africa, okay? Because Africa is some other people argue that Africa is a very dynamic country, dynamic continents. It has got vibrancy, it has got a lot of potentials. And if it is nurtured properly, I think Africa can move up. And we have seen that in the last couple of decades. One of the aspects of Africa was the slave trade of the 15th century, which the European powers, the colonial powers, British, French, Portuguese, Dutch, they practiced that, okay, as a form of economic empowerment and also as a form of making money and transporting the slaves across the Atlantic to the to the United States, okay. And again, that is another history, the history of the slaves, the black population, the African who settled down in the southern part of USA, okay? And that continued for a long, long time till, America became independent in 1776, okay? If you have read the history by George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, okay? But only 100, almost 78 years later, around 1852 or 1856, then American president, US President Abraham Lincoln, he got the issue of slavery very seriously and he tried to resolve it, and he issued a proclamation, a presidential proclamation, which is known as the abolition of slavery. But this was a legal part. But in reality, slavery continued in America long after, till the beginning or the middle of the 20th century. And we had a leader called Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was the leader of the civil rights movement. Okay, and you must have heard the speech, I Have a Dream speech in Washington, D.C. So he is the person in 1964, for the first time, the black people, they got the right to vote. So America became independent in 1776, but the black people got the right to vote in 1964. almost like 150, 160 years. So even the women, they did not get the right to vote in America for a long, long time. America again became independent in 1776. The women, the gender, they got the right to vote or franchise in 1920 through the 19th Amendment after World War One. World War One was what? 1914 to 1919. The women got in 1920, and the blacks got the right to vote in 1964. Okay, even then also there are a lot of Ku Klux Klan. There is a lot of resistance against the black people. I don't like to go into history because that is again another domain. How the slave issue, the Africans in America, they suffered long, long time, 100 and 200 years. Okay? And only in the 21st century, when Barack Obama was the first African American to become the president of the United States in the year 2008. So for a long time, they were completely peripheralized, they are completely marginalized. The other things that I think I need to discuss is the scramble for Africa. You must have heard this term, scramble. Okay, you know, we sometimes when we are small children, we used to play scramble. Okay, so scramble means what? Jockeying, like grabbing something. It's like almost like when you leave a couple of kids to get a piece of this slice of the pie or the cake piece. Okay, they always try to get a bigger piece. Okay, so if you think Africa is like a piece of, is like a cake, okay? So all these colonial powers, Great Britain, France, Belgium, Germany, Portugal, okay? Everybody is trying to scramble, okay? So that they can get a bigger piece of the pie, okay? In terms of economic exploitation, in terms of exploiting the mineral resources, taking the raw materials back to their country, process it, and again sell it back to those countries with double the price, making a lot of profit in the process. Okay. This scramble for Africa, it also led to fragmentation and decimation of the African society. Okay. Because nobody was looking at a real empowerment of the African people. People were just using Africa like a piece of meat. Okay. How much everybody can exploit, how much every country, those colonial powers, they can exploit those. Colonial onslaught destroyed rich physical resources. It destroyed societal and cultural fabric of the African people. Rich physical resources, destroying societal and cultural fabrics. Okay. So they tried to, you can see, I mean, I was reading an article, the whitewashing of Africa. Okay. Trying to expect that the entire places that they colonized be conform to the Anglo-Saxon tradition, ignoring completely the intra-African identity or cultural distinctiveness or uniqueness in those countries. Okay, transplantation of European ideas and institutions on colonial Africa. So they try to impose the different European standards, okay, in a cultural norms, in a societal norms on African things. And it definitely affected, particularly, you know, there is a significant amount of tribes and clans that are there in Africa and how they try to cope with that. Some of them, they tried to merge with the mainstream European white culture, but some of them, they strongly resisted that. In sociological terms, we have something called melting pot and salad bowl. Melting pot means what? You try to resist, but at the end you give up, okay? And you merge with the mainstream, okay? You merge with the Anglo conformity. You merge with the Anglo-Saxon identity. So you become also like the way the white people are, the colonial people are. So that is like a melting pot. All the different cultural identity and sub-identities, they merge into one single pot, okay? On the other hand, we have this, what Milton Gordon would like to say, a sociologist, is the cultural pluralism models. Different tribes, different clans, different places in Uganda, in Kenya, Nigeria. You pick up any of those African countries, in South Africa, Central Africa, Northern Africa, Eastern Africa. They maintain their own cultural distinctiveness, okay, in spite of the fact that there is a lot of pressure to assimilate, okay. So this is this contest between assimilation. When I say assimilation, it means cultural assimilation. You culturally assimilate, okay? Talk alike, think alike, act alike, behave alike. Okay, assimilation versus non-assimilation, non-assimilationist characters. Okay, I would like to maintain my cultural distinctiveness. Okay, I may join hands with you on certain aspects. Okay, on terms of joining in the mainstream economy, mainstream education, mainstream governance, etc. But in a private domain, I would maintain my own cultural ethos, on my own cultural um, paraphernalia, etc., etc. So I think there is a big dichotomy between this melting pot and salad bowl. Salad bowl means you have got different things, okay? Different tribes have got different ideas, different ways of food habit, different ways of dress, different ways of societal norms, behavior, etc., etc. So that is called a salad bowl. Like in a salad bowl, you have got cucumber, you have got tomatoes, you have got radish, you have got carrots. So one side melting pot, everything merged into one assimilationist kind of approach. The other one is non-assimilationist. Everything is put it in separate places. Okay. Deficit of ideas and institutions. That was again another problem of Africa. Particularly, it happened in the early part of 20th centuries. Uh, Although I must say, to be fair to some of these colonial powers, in certain areas, like in the judicial system, in the legal system, in the educational system, they did a lot of things which really help in empowering some of these things in the English language, etc., etc. So I think it's not that everything that the colonial masters did was all bad. Okay, a lot of things they also developed a class called the elite class, educated elite particular group. Impact of external influences, uh, but again, the basic problems in Africa remained as it is for a long chunk of time. Food insecurity, severe famine, heavy dependence on food aid, inter and intra-state wars, tough battles between the states, the border wars, uh, environmental degradation, a wasteful use of natural and human resources, lack of sustainable development, that was again another important issue, inadequate health and educational facilities. People were trying desperately to move up, but the process of health and education was not there. Even today also, I mean, if you look at the African students and you go to any hospitals in major hospital, like for example, I'm here in Delhi, you go to any major hospitals, you'll see a lot of patients coming from different African countries for better treatments. And they tell us that they don't have enough hospitals, they don't have enough doctors or specialists in all of those African countries. That's why they come to India. They think they can get a better services there at a very reasonably good price. Same thing with education. You see a lot of students from Africa, they are enrolled in many universities in different parts of India, including in Delhi and many other places. So because they think India is like the education hub, and there you can get a lot of good quality education at a reasonable price. Okay. Uh, the contested borders, this is again another big issue. A lot of times you have got division of the countries based on the border war. The latest example I can give you on Sudan. Sudan used to be one country for a long, long time. But they had a big civil war within Sudan. Now Sudan is split. One is the original Sudan, the Khartoum is the capital, and then other part is the southern Sudan. Okay, so they had a long civil war in Ethiopia, Eritrea, that was there. Very recently, I think Donald Trump, he announced that there was an agreement between Rwanda and Congo. So this border war that is also depleting the strength of some of these individual countries. Partly it is because of the tribal warfare, the dominance of one tribe over the other, sometimes clan supremacy, sometimes politics of it, sometimes the interference by the outside powers. So, the reasons are many, but the fact of the matter is, it affects the governance and it affects the fragility of those African states. Okay, so colonialism, neo-colonialism, etc., etc. Uh, in the types of regimes that we see some traditional rulers, some kings and chiefs of the tribes. We see direct democracy. Some places they tried to develop a national unity governments, but again, there was this intra-ethnic rivalry. One ethnic group tried to dominate over the other groups. So that created a lot of cleavages. That created a lot of animosities within those ethnic groups. Okay, military regimes by 1970, by one estimate, half of Africa was under military rule. Countries like Ghana, Nigeria, Zaire, etc. Um, there are also some places where there are authoritarianism. They had democracy, but one leader, he usurped all the powers in his own hand. That is called authoritarian. Some places they try to experiment with pluralist regimes, uh, trying to develop some kind of democracy with a multi-party system, with a multi-party governance, with some level of popular participation in some ways, okay, at the grassroots level to the top, okay. So we have got military governments, we have got direct democracy, we have got traditional democracy, we have got authoritarian governments, we have got pluralist democracy. Uh, there are also different internal factors like determinants. There are demands for human rights, participation, uh, democratic participation, the role of the civil society. I mean, to be honest, there was absolutely lack of any civil societies over there. Okay, civil societies in most of the democratic entities, they act like a safety valve. They act like a checks and balance kind of thing. So whatever the government does, the act of omission and commission, this kind of uh, civil society, they become like a watchdog. Unfortunately, in Africa, for a long time, across the board, we did not have any civil societies. So currently they do have in some places, but not the way it is expected to be. Democracy, of course, there are some ripple effect because of the democracy in Eastern Europe, democracy in East Asia, Southeast Asia, democracy the world over. So it did have some impact in certain ways. But the wave of change that was supposed to sweep Africa did not happen the way people anticipated or the outside experts anticipated. Of course, the end of the Cold War, it brought about some kind of changes and some kind of uh, rhythm or new life into this whole aspect. Administrative systems, military and political parties, the military was, in some places, military were using uniform, in some places, the military junta or the, after holding a military coup, uh, some of these military leaders, they joined politics, okay, and trying to form their own political parties. Okay? Theory of contagion, this is again another important aspect that we see in Africa, meaning the domino effect. If country, let us say a country A is in the middle, country B, country C, country D, country E, they are all there, okay, surrounding it. So what happens is, if one country's governance systems or the regime falls, then that is the reason you will see the adjoining countries, country B, country C, country D, country E, everybody falls. Okay, it's almost like one car hitting another car in a foggy weather. Okay, the other cars, they're hitting one after the other. Okay, so you see this domino effect, which is also known as the theory of contagions. Okay, some people say there is also theory of conspiracy. Okay, nobody knows. I mean, who is doing what? Every now and then you hear some countries they're undergoing a regime change. Okay, suddenly from a democracy it is being converted into authoritarianism or a military junta or military government. Okay, some people blame CIA or KGB or some other external powers or foreign powers, for example. Okay, sometimes the political parties they are being influenced by the foreign powers, by the interested powers. Okay, or the lack of it. They don't have any systematic political parties. So I think that is also very, very important. In terms of Africa and world economy, the position, Africa, again, as I said at the beginning, is not a homogeneous entity. It consists of many, many different countries. What you see in one country, for example, in Northern Africa, we have got Egypt, Sudan, Libya, Tunisia, Morocco. Even within them, just look at it. Egypt, for example. Nasser used to be there. Hosni Mubarak used to be there. Anwar Sadat used to be there. Currently, Muhammad al-Sisi, he is the president. Okay. And in the last 40, 50, 60 years, I have been to Egypt. And you see one part of Egypt is highly advanced, highly affluent. But the other side, you go to little bit countryside, you go to little bit rural, you go little bit 50 miles, 100 miles away from Cairo or Alexandria, the big cities, you see the poor people out there. And people I have seen, they are asking for few rupees. I mean, a little bit money. They're literally begging for it. I was very surprised. And I saw that. And this was just a couple of years ago in Cairo. You go to Sudan, the civil war scenario that I just told you between the Sudan and Northern Sudan and Southern Sudan. Libya, for a long time, it was ruled by the leader, Muammar Gaddafi. Then he was overthrown by United States in the 1998, 99. Then now, currently, there is a big warfare between the different tribal groups, different chieftains over there. So they don't have any democratic entities in Libya. Tunisia, they also suffered a lot during the Arab Spring because some people they wanted to bring in reforms in Tunisia, and Tunisia again barely is managing a democratic entities. Morocco, they still have a monarchy over there. Let us go to Western Africa, for example. I'm giving you some example: Mauritania, Mali, Nigeria, Chad, Cameroon, Benin, Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso, by example, in Africa, there is a region called Sahel region. These are the countries, Togo, Ghana, Ivory Coast, Liberia, and those are very backward in terms of socio-economic indicators. And there is a lot of internecine welfare, the tribal welfares over there, Sierra Leone, Guyana, Guinea-Bissau, Gambia, Senegal, etc. Come to Eastern Africa, we have got Djibouti, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia, Tanzania, Uganda. Some countries little bit up, some countries down. Uganda maybe little bit up. Okay, you go to Senegal. You go to Somalia. You lot of times you hear some of these very sad stories, unpleasant stories like the pirates. They are pilfering properties from the sea, etc., etc. Central and South Africa, Angola, Botswana, Burundi, Democratic Republic of Congo, Gabon, Lesotho, Malawi, Namibia, Rwanda, South Africa, just keep it aside because they are very affluent comparatively to other countries. Swaziland, I think a lot of these countries, they will be categorized under LDC. What is LDC? LDC stands for least developed countries. So, within developing countries, there are three categories: upper tier developing countries, developing countries, underdeveloped countries, and then least developed countries. I think a lot of these countries that I just told you in different parts of Africa, they will come at the bottom half. Okay. And so it is very incumbent on the richer countries within African continent and also the rest of the outside of Africa, in Europe, Asia, North America, etc., to pick up. Like if one of your brother is going down, so it is incumbent on you from a moral, ethical point of view to pick up his or her hand and lift them up. Okay, but a lot of times, a lot of people don't do that. Type of regimes, I told you: direct democracy, national unity governments, development, authoritarianism, Southeast Asia. Position, debt problem of Africa, I told you about it. How, for example, China gives a huge amount of financial aid, but again, these countries, they're trapped in this debt trap kind of things, and they don't know how to deal with it. Multilateralism, they do have some multilateral bodies. Most of them, all of them are members of the United Nations, but they're still trying to move up in the ladder. So I think, again, it falls back upon the countries, particularly the rich countries, the G8 countries, the G20 countries, to help them out. Okay. The Cold War, during the Cold War, the Congo crisis of 66, the crisis in Angola in 75, the Horn of Africa, then the role of the non-alignment movement. And I think that was a very positive impact on Africa. And I think you need to see that. And also the role played by US and Soviet Union, particularly the intelligence units, and how they tried to impose the ideological hegemony over those countries. The UN peacekeeping, peacemaking, and peace building operations. We had got one United Nations Secretary General. He happened to be from Africa, Dr. Kofi Annan. During that time, we saw a lot of these countries: Mozambique, Namibia, Congo, Liberia, Sierra Leone, etc., where the peacekeeping operations were in full swing. India did contribute significantly in the PKO, peacekeeping operations in Africa. Okay, And also India was at the forefront in ending the process of apartheid in South Africa. Apartheid means what? Racial segregation. You segregate people along the racial line. The white people, black people, colored people. Don't do that. Everybody should be treated as equal. And segregation. It went continued for a long time till mid 1980s. Okay, and remember, India did not allow the South African cricket team to come to India. Why? Because we cannot see only the white players. Okay? Today, when a South African team comes to India, you have got white people, black people, colored people, even people from Indian origin, Indian diaspora. They are playing for South Africa, which is really interesting because today South Africa is a desegregated nation. It is a biracial, multiracial country. Okay. Landmine issue, that was a big issue. Drug trafficking, human trafficking. I think in a lot of these things, United Nations did help to the United Nations. In a post-Cold War era, the support for West US as a new role, conflict management, particularly after George W. Bush, Barack Obama's 8 years of presidency, then Donald Trump, the first 4 years, then Joe Biden, now again Trump back to the White House. I think they have been trying to help out in different ways. And India also does that. Okay. Remember a couple of weeks ago, Prime Minister Modi went to Namibia. He also went to different African places. Okay. He meets leader of G8, particularly South African leaders, and trying to help in a very meaningful way, in a very concrete manner, whatever we could, particularly in dealing with the issues of poverty, food crisis, famine issues, and providing some kind of what I would say the Marshall Plan. Remember, at the end of World War II, the Americans helped European countries ravaged by World War II with a Marshall Plan, a big chunk, $1 billion aid. Okay, so India has been trying, not with that amount of money, but at least a significant chunk of money. I hope and wish that other countries in the world, they also try to help some of these countries in this particular way so that Africa can also stand up on its own leg. And also they can be proud members, okay, with the international community so that they are not lagging behind, right? So I think that's all for today. So any quick questions, Supriya, any quick queries? Or do you understand what I'm trying to say? Is it clear, Supriya? All right. So thank you very much for this evening. Okay. Thank you for joining this class. Okay. This is State and Society in Africa. Today is the second class. Again, we'll see you next Sunday. Again, the same time, 7 o'clock. So thanks for joining this class. This is part of MEMIDI. Thank you so much. Thank you.